Around 3 weeks ago, you came for me in multiple comments after one of my videos. Hundreds of you. Some furious, some gleeful, some armed with Wikipedia and a point to make. You said Persia was never conquered. Alexander the Great disagrees. So does every Arab general from the 7th century. So does Genghis Khan. And you know what? You're not wrong on the military facts. So let me be precise about something I should have stated more clearly from the very beginning. This channel does not cover military history. Military conquests make great clickbait. No doubts about that. Military conquests are about armies clashing, capitals falling, burning, emperors humiliated. That is journalism. That is news. That is the surface. This channel, however, operates at the civilizational level. And at that level, the question is never, did an army win? The question is this: did the conqueror actually achieve their civilizational overwrite? Because this is the goal of every invasion, every conquest. Civilizational overwrite. Otherwise, why do this? If you just come, stay there, pillage a little bit, and then leave, what's the point? Did they replace what was there before at the deepest level with something new? That is the frame. That is what we are applying to Persia today. And by the time we are done, I promise you, the comment section is going to look very different. Let's start with Alexander the Great, 334 BC. He crosses the Hellespont with roughly 45,000 men. He defeats Darius III at 3 successive battles: Granicus, Issus, Gaugamela. He burns Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, to the ground. He hunts Darius across the empire until the emperor is murdered in the mountains by his own men. The greatest Persian dynasty in history gone. Military conquest? Total. Absolute. No doubts about that. Undeniable. Now here's what happened next. Alexander started wearing Persian robes. He adopted Persian court ceremonies. He demanded that his officers perform proskinesis, the Persian ritual of prostration before royalty. His Macedonian generals were furious. They had not crossed the known world to bow like Persians. He arranged the mass marriage of 10,000 of his officers to Persian noble women. He himself married Stateira, daughter of Darius III, the emperor he had defeated. He maintained the entire Persian administrative system, the satrapies, the bureaucracy, the tax structure. He declared Babylon a Persian imperial city, his new capital. Alexander did not overwrite. He put on Persian civilization like a coat. And when he died at 32, drunk in Babylon in 323 BC, his empire fragmented immediately. Within 170 years, a Persian clan, the Parthians, drove the Greek Seleucids out of the Iranian heartland entirely. The Persians reclaimed their own land from within. Military conquest? Alexander. Civilizational overwrite? Nobody. Now, Rome. Rome never conquered Persia. Let's state that clearly. The Roman Empire and the Persian empires, first Parthian, then the Sassanid, fought each other for 7 centuries across roughly the same frontier. 7 centuries of the most expensive military standoff in the ancient world. But here is the moment that defines the relationship. 260 AD. The Battle of Edessa. The Roman conqueror Valerian, commander of 70,000 soldiers, ruler of the most powerful empire on earth, was captured alive by the Sassanid Persian king Shapur I. Not killed in battle, captured alive. He became the first Roman emperor in history ever taken prisoner in battle. Christian historians of the time reported that Shapur used Valerian as a human footstool when mounting his horse. The claim is disputed by modern historians. The Persian inscriptions show Valerian kneeling in submission, not serving as furniture. But consider this: the Romans themselves found the footstool rumor plausible enough to record it. That tells you everything about the psychological impact of the event. Shapur had Valerian's submission carved into the rock faces that still stand in Iran today. At Naqsh-e-Rostam, the same cliffs where Achaemenid kings had carved their victories for centuries, Shapur I sits on horseback while a Roman emperor kneels before him. Rome kneeling in stone. In Persia forever. Rome never achieved civilizational override of Persia. Persia outlasted Rome entirely. Now here's where it gets truly interesting. the Arab conquest. You, my friends, spoke a lot about that in the comments, and I truly enjoyed them. Thank you. 632 to 651 AD. The Rashidun Caliphate, electrified by a new faith, sweeps out of Arabia with armies that had defeated the Byzantine and Persian empires simultaneously. The two superpowers of the ancient world, both broken within 2 decades. They defeat the Sassanid Empire at the Battle of Al-Qudusiyah in 636. The last Persian emperor, Yazdegerd III, is hunted across his own empire for 15 years and dies in obscurity in Merv, killed not by Arab soldiers but by a local miller. The Sassanid dynasty ends. Persia is militarily conquered. Note, militarily. This is the case that looks most like civilizational overwrite, the one that we dissect here analytically. A new religion, a new ruling class, new laws, new administrative structures. The Zoroastrian faith that had been the state religion of Persia for centuries begins a slow decline. This is real. This happened. The theological layer of Persian civilization was genuinely transformed. And yet, the Arabic language, the language of the Quran, the language of the conquerors, never replaced Persian. Farsi survived. Poets like Rumi, Hafez, and Ferdowsi wrote in Persian, not Arabic. The Quran was revealed in Arabic, but the greatest works of Islamic civilization, its philosophy, its poetry, its administrative tradition, were all written in Persian by Persian scholars. Something more remarkable happened. The Arab conquerors were themselves absorbed into Persian court culture. The Abbasid Caliphate, which replaced the Umayyads in 750 AD, was built on Persian administrative foundations. The capital, Baghdad, was constructed by Persian engineers in a Persian organizational tradition. The Persian bureaucratic structure ran the Islamic Empire. Persian architecture defined its cities. Persian poetry defined its literary identity. The Arabs brought a new religion to Persia. Persia, however, gave that religion a civilization. That is not a conquest. That is absorption. Next, the Mongols. This is the hardest case, and it deserves honesty. Some of you mentioned the Mongols, and it's a fair point. 1219 AD. Genghis Khan's forces enter Persian territory after a diplomatic catastrophe. The Khwarezm Shah murdered Mongol trade ambassadors, a decision of almost incomprehensible strategic misjudgment. What followed was not conquest in any conventional sense. It was an attempted annihilation. Bukhara, Samarkand, Nishapur, Herat, cities that had taken centuries to build, were razed to the ground. Populations slaughtered. Irrigation systems deliberately destroyed. Some historians estimate that Iran's population was reduced by as much as 2/3 in some regions. The Mongol invasion of Persia may be the single most destructive event in the territory's history. These were not soldiers looking to govern. They were soldiers looking to empty that land. If civilizational override was achievable anywhere, by any means, that was the moment. No previous conqueror had come close to this level of physical destruction. And yet, within 2 generations, the Mongol rulers of Persia, the Ilkhanate, converted to the Persian version of Islam. They commissioned Persian poetry. Their court culture became Persian court culture. Their administrative language became Farsi. The grandson of Mongol warlords was writing ghazals, love poems, in Persian. The most violent invasion in Persian history produced the same result as every other invasion. The conqueror was absorbed. If this analysis is reframing how you see civilizational power, subscribe to Eagle's View right now. Because the 6-tier framework we are applying here is the same one we use to analyze every major geopolitical event on this channel. You need it in your toolkit. Hit that button. So, what is actually happening here? Why does this keep occurring? Let me give you the structural answer. There are 6 tiers of power in any civilization. Military force is the loudest and the lowest, the most visible, the fastest to deploy, and the fastest to decay. An army can take a capital in weeks. It cannot replace what a civilization believes about itself in centuries. The deepest tiers of power, the worldview, the cosmology, the identity, the cultural memory, are not stored in palaces or armies. They are stored in the language. Think about what language actually is. It is not just words. It is the architecture of thought. Every concept a civilization has developed over millennia, every philosophical distinction, every theological nuance, every poetic image of what it means to be alive in this particular patch of earth, under this particular sky, is encoded in specific words that exist only in that language. When you lose the language, you do not just lose a communication tool. You lose the accumulated intellectual and spiritual capital of every generation that came before you. Persian is one of the oldest continuously spoken languages on earth. It has been spoken on the Iranian plateau in recognizable form for over 2,500 years. When Alexander burned Persepolis, he destroyed the palace. He did not destroy Farsi. When the Arabs conquered the Sassanid Empire, they brought a new faith. They could not replace the language. When the Mongols razed the cities, the manuscripts survived, carried by scholars fleeing into the mountains and across the desert. Every conqueror of Persia captured the tier 6 layer, the military, the lowest, the cheapest, and the weakest layer. Some captured the tier 3 layer, the political administration. None of them captured the tier 1, identity and worldview, and tier 2, which is culture, because these layers live in the language, and Farsi did not fail. Atatürk understood this in reverse when he removed 60% of the Turkish vocabulary in the 1920s. He understood that language is the carrier of civilizational memory. He performed surgery on his own civilization's deepest tiers, and Turkey has been searching for its identity ever since. We spoke about that in our previous segment, and a lot of you objected and said, no, that's not true. Mostly it was the people from Turkey, and I understand why. I've been to Turkey hundreds of times probably in my life, and I have a lot of friends in Turkey, and I know that Turkish people are proud, and I respect that. But at the same time, Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been talking a lot about pan-Turkism, about uniting other nations that speak a form of Turkish language like Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, etc., etc. Why would he be doing this? Because he is searching. And you do not search for an identity when you know who you are and you know what identity you already have. The wound inflicted on Turkish identity by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk is 100 years old, and it has not healed. Nobody performed that surgery on Persia, however. Every invader who tried to govern Persia needed Persian administrators, Persian scholars, Persian poets, and in needing them, they were absorbed by them. Here's the question I will leave you with, and I want you to sit with it for a moment before you scroll away. Military conquest of Persia has been achieved multiple times. Alexander did it, like you said, the Arab armies did it, the Mongols came closest to erasing this civilization permanently. The Romans never even managed the military part, they could not even scratch the surface. And civilizational overwrite has never been completed, not once. In 2,500 years of recorded attempts by some of the most powerful military machines in human history on Earth. The pattern is not luck, it is structure. It is what happens when the tier 1 and tier 2 layers of a civilization, the worldview and the cultural memory, are encoded in a language resilient enough to outlast the armies that come for it. If military conquest of Persia has failed to produce civilizational override across 2,500 years of persistent, often devastating attempts, what does that tell you about the nature of a conflict that relies entirely on military tools against a civilization whose deepest tiers have survived everything that has ever come before? I am not answering that question today. I am asking it because the answer requires a much longer conversation. That conversation is what Eagle's View is for. Subscribe now. The full structural breakdown, the scenario analysis, and the historical depth that this context demands is waiting for you. This is the analysis you will not find anywhere else. That's a wrap for today, dear friends, and I'll see you next week.